creating the illusion of the fern leaves being where the white is. And I'm going to do a bit more work on that with pen and with whiteout when I get to that stage. Okay, by now my pen lines have dried a bit, and now I can go in and start really laying in some of the heavy black. The shadow of this creature has to fall across this creature, and I'm just going to go right in and go for it. Again, maybe I'm being a little bolder about this than I would have been in my younger days, but I've drawn a lot of, I've done a lot of drawings, and
You're a seasoned warrior.
I'm a seasoned foolish vet, and I'm just going to go for it. And I want it to appear that that set of jaws is right above him, so I'm really going to go in there. Okay, now another area where I'm going to lay in some heavy blacks. You noticed how this lower dinosaur, I've left this part of its body almost like flattened. I mean, it looks unnaturally flattened. That's because from the time I began the drawing, I was picturing that this is happening on a cushion of vegetation. So I'm now going to go in and begin really banging in what will hopefully evoke that they're lying on all sorts of sticks and brush, and if I do my job right, you'll believe me. If I fail miserably, laughter will ensue. And part of the reason I did that from the start was I really wanted to not distract myself with this part of the drawing just yet. How's that? Okay, now, time for the blade and the whiteout. Actually, I'm going to do a little bit more brush work. One of the essential parts of making something look alive, as opposed to a still life mask or something, is making sure that you're including some visual information that indicates there's a tongue inside that mouth, and this eye is alive rather than dead, and so on and so forth. And I also want to go in and lay in parts of the roof of this mouth. And another indication of a tongue there. Okay. Now, there's lines that bothered me from the start with this drawing, and I'm now going to go in and start to doctor those. I would normally erase at this point, but because there's still ink drying and because this is a demo drawing rather than a drawing for publication, I'm going to skip the erasing of pencil stage, but it's essential to you all that you erase your pencils. Now, one of the lines that bothered me from the start, which you can't see that well because of how the light is reflecting off of it, is right at the top of that hip. You see that lump? I want to refine that lump right there so it looks less like cancerous tissue and more like the top of a hip. So I'm going to start by going in with my whiteout and bringing that line into alignment. And I think I said this last time, treat working with whiteout, whether you work with a brush whiteout, there are plenty of good whiteouts that you can use with watercolor brushes, or a correction fluid pen, which is what I'm using here. This is one of your drawing tools. It's not just there to eliminate mistakes. It's actually like drawing with a pen with white ink. And I really use them as a drawing tool. How much can you see of that? Let me move this around a little bit. Okay, I've eliminated that line. I'm going to go back in once the whiteout dries and sharpen up that line right above the hip where the leg comes in. I wasn't happy with how that line went in right from the start. And you may recall that was one of the first lines I laid down. Sometimes first lines are not best lines. I like using these correction pens because they're very conducive to laying in scale textures. I'm able to get just a little dot of white out of them. And I can really do some fairly fine work with that. Around the eye, a little bit more juice to that eye.
Now, Steve, do you prefer using the whiteout over maybe the more traditional things like acrylic or gouache?
Yeah, I'll tend to use acrylic or gouache, Morgan, if I'm doing a color piece or wash painting rather than this. But if I'm working with brush and ink or pen and ink, I've come to really get comfortable with these. They've refined the technology where the points have gotten finer. I love these pressure. This is a Pentel fine point. By applying pressure, I can get more or less whiteout out of it. So I've got a lot of control, and I've got, in some cases, more control than I would get working with a watercolor brush and a gouache or just because I always have the opportunity afterwards to go in and sharpen up or redraw the black lines on top of this. And some of the brush whiteouts, or if I go in with gouache, you can't really draw that well with pen on top of it. It'll tend to chip up or clog your pen point. And this stuff, if you really let it dry, you can draw right over it. It creates almost another paper surface. Okay, and I'm really doing some drawing at this stage, working with this whiteout stuff. This whiteout stuff. Okay, a few lines that bother me. This line is too straight. And again, in nature, you tend not to see many straight lines. So I'm going in and just adding a little bit of a curve to that.
Steve, you're doing mostly in 19. Have you ever started with just black paper? Or
I have, and in fact, one of the demos we'll do at some point will involve scratchboard. Drawing the way that we usually do, where we're laying down black lines to create the illusion of shadows, is actually drawing backwards. What we see, there's no lines when we look at our hands, and I'm looking at you all. There's no lines there. It's how light is hitting the form. And going in and drawing with white on black is actually closer to the way we see. It's a more rational way of drawing. But you know, this is what has evolved as the more traditional approach to cartooning. And there's a real beauty in, you know, drawing with brush, pen, and ink. But we are drawing backwards. We should always be aware of that we're creating an illusion of how shadows are created, and we're working backwards because we're trying to create the illusion of how light falls by drawing its absence. And it is counterintuitive in a lot of ways. Now at this stage with the whiteout, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do more vegetative forms as well. You see these ferns down here? And at this point I'm going to go in and indicate with just some vague shapes that there might be things like club moss and one important note for dinosaur fans out there and artists. I know there's at least one other in the room here with me. There was no grass in the age of dinosaurs, and it makes it really tough when you're drawing because what's the first thing most cartoonists put down on paper when they're drawing an outdoor scene? Grass, and there was no grass. Grass did not exist yet. Whether you believe in evolution or intelligent design doesn't matter, there was no grass. This means, of course, the dinos had to get high on other things, but that's another conversation to have. Okay, I'm now going to go in with the whiteout, and I'm sort of sharpening up these fern patterns that I laid earlier. And in some cases, I'll go in and cut into some of those shapes, and I'm just trying to give them a little more clarity as vegetative forms. And I'm also going to go in and catch things like the edge of this. This is the Velociraptor who's on top, the edge of the leg there. The rest of this is looking pretty okay to me. Let me go over and